2 more times. Oh. One more time. So, my dear friends, a very, very heartfelt welcome to you. Please know your presence is a blessing. This program, Creating Sacred Intentions, has been going on, as I always like to say jokingly, since my hair was black, since 2001. And we've always had a very wonderful crowd that has come gathered to participate. It was originally myself, Rabbi Ted Falcon, Pastor Don McKenzie for many years. And then when Pastor Don went to Minneapolis, Pastor Dave Brown took over. There he is in the back. And then from time to time, we've had Ann Holmes Redding. But today we have our co-minister, Sally Jo Gilbert de Vargas. Yes, give her a hand, yes. Okay, my friends, I have an allocated time, so let me start right now, my part. So the goal is, how do we, what are the sacred intentions for fulfilling the purpose of our life? And different religions have different ways to describe it. You become saved. You deepen an inner peace, sakina. If you look at the Eastern traditions, it's mukti, moksha. You become freed. I love best the work of Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, who say, really, we are here to experience joy. And he says there's a difference between joy and happiness. Happiness is dependent on external factors. Things are going well, things are not going well. That's happiness, sorrow. But joy is an inner state of being that needs to be cultivated. Maybe part of it through sacred intentions. So, I love metaphors and stories. So here's a story by Attar, who's a Sufi master, who says, there was a king, a very lovely king, who would feel a lot of unhappiness when things didn't go well, defeated in battles, become depressed. And then when things went well, became very excited. And just these ups and downs of life, happiness, unhappiness. And then his council, who were told, can you find a way to resolve this problem? They took his ruby ring. They say it's a true story. I don't know if it is. And they wrote upon it, after much consideration, they said, in good times and bad times, just look at your ruby ring. And on that were 4 words. This too will pass. This too will pass. So just be with that. The other one which I like very much is, let me take the Buddhist version, the many versions of this. On a moonlit night, a Buddhist monk's house was burned to the ground. And all the monk does is look at the house and say, finally a perfect view of the moon at night. So just be with that. Okay, now setting sacred intentions. All the traditions say, Jamal, will you start with honoring your physical body? It's a sacred temple. And we know from the pandemic how critical it is to take care of our body, our physical health. If you study Buddhism, there's a saying in the Dhammapada. The Buddha says, health, contentment, and trust are your greatest possessions. And your greatest joy is freedom. But what I wanted to point out was, health is number 1. So ask yourself, you can write it down and think about it, in what ways am I taking care of my physical health? It's a sacred obligation. Ever since I've been here, 1996, this has become my gymnasium, this sanctuary. I walk back and forth as often as I can. I complete my steps. What are you doing? Just think about it. Okay, moving on. How about also honoring our mental health, our thoughts? So I can see you better. What did the Buddha say? Buddha said, Jamal, your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your negative thoughts can harm you. And I love the words of the Buddha. We are what we think. Everything that we are arises with our thoughts. Jamal, speak and act with a pure mind and happiness follows you as the wheel follows the oxen cart. Speak and act with an impure mind and unhappiness follows you as your shadow follows you. So, question now is, do we have a technique? Do you have a technique to manage your thoughts? I love this technique called neti, which in Eastern tradition means not real, not this, not that. So they say, when you have a negative thought, if you don't take care of it, it develops a negative feeling, a difficult feeling. If I don't take care of that, here's a danger. And here's a key word, which, when I attend conferences, they say, thank you for saying this word. It festers into a negative imaginary scenario. I want revenge, I'll do this, I'll do that, all in my mind. If I don't take care of that, guess what? It manifests. Why? Because all the realms are interconnected. I can't say this is just my imaginal realm. It's connected to this realm I call reality. Which is why the masters, the teachers say, Jamal, the moment you encounter this negative imaginary scenario, say, neti, not real, not this, not that. If you're cyber savvy, delete, cancel. I like to say, letting go. What technique can you use for that mind negativity which leads to negative imaginary scenarios? Just be with that. Okay, third point. Difficult feelings and suffering. Now, all the traditions say they are inevitable. Why? Because it's a world of opposites. High is defined by low, long by short. There are joys and also bound to be sorrows. How do I deal with that? Again, the point is, when I have difficult feelings, don't allow it to fester. Otherwise, my righteous anger festers into a need for revenge. My fear into paranoia. My sadness into depression. Now, here's this wonderful insights. I'll just mention them. They're bound to happen, but think of a technique that allows you to embrace them, because if I soften them by acknowledging them, healing them, integrating them, I become a more complete, developed human being. My anger becomes transformed when I have this technique of embracing them into an inner enthusiasm. My fear into a greater mindfulness. My sadness into greater empathy. Which is why you've heard different traditions say, like Rumi says, the dark thought, the shame, the malice, greet them at the door laughing. Each one has been sent as a guide from beyond. But here's the greatest insight all the traditions say. Jamal, don't run towards pain and suffering, just don't run away from them. But have some technique. So in our community, we have a technique from the mystics who say sacred holding. When you have a difficult feeling, don't push it away, don't deny it, don't avoid it. When you have time, ask yourself, what is it I felt, that difficult feeling? Where in my body am I feeling it? with compassion for yourself. Just be with it. Breathe through it. Ask it questions. Do you have a message for me? How may I love you? And then breathe through it. Integrate that. Which is why Carl Jung said, Jamal, would you once in your life have the courage and grace to kiss the demons and dragons within you? That is how they turn into a prince or princess. So just be with that. How do I deal with my feelings, which causes me suffering? And one insight I want to give you from the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu from the Book of Joy. And this is the main thesis of the book that says, Jamal, the way you deal with your difficult feelings, the way you deal with your suffering, acknowledging, healing, integrating them. Jamal, the way you deal with your suffering is what shapes your character and sculpts the destiny of your life. Very important point. It sculpts the destiny of my life. Ask yourself, how am I dealing with my inevitable difficult feeling, my inevitable suffering that's going to occur in my life? Just be with that. And look at the time. I'm going to hurry up now. Just that question, how do I deal with my difficult feelings, with my suffering? Can I think of a technique? And by the way, in our community, we have videos of different techniques. And this one is called sacred holding. If you want to get hold of that, let me know. I'll give you the link to those small, short videos. Okay, very quickly, how can I feed my soul, honor my soul? Nurture, nourish, not only my body, my thoughts, my emotions, but my soul, my spirit. Every tradition says, practice silence. Ask yourself, am I practicing silence? The Dalai Lama would spend 6 hours every day in silence. Desmond Tutu, the late Desmond Tutu, 3 hours. And the key is this, all the teachers say, Jamal, if you want to practice silence, don't say, I should practice silence when I'm free and when I have time. It never works out that way. Do it just for 5 minutes. Say, I'm going to do it every day for 5 minutes, but build your schedule around that. So number one is silence. So practices, of course, depends on your need. For me, number one is silence. Number two is practicing gratitude. There's so many studies on that. Jamal, if you practice gratitude regularly, there's a book by Oprah Winfrey and a Harvard professor named Brooks, who says if you do it for half an hour every day, write down the points for which I'm grateful and just be with those feelings every day of the week, then add new ones at the end of the week, it changes the wiring of your brain. From a spiritual perspective, I'm a Muslim, the Quran says, everything which exists in the heavens and the earth extols the limitless glory of God. Everything, even a stone is praising God, thanking God. So when I praise God and thank God, I'm joining a cosmic chorus and I feel exalted. And the other point every tradition makes, Jamal, even in times of difficulties, if you're expressing thanks, you're giving thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. Okay, one more practice very good for us today, for spiritual practice. In fact, this is emphasized in the Book of Joy. Jamal, can you develop the capacity for forgiveness? In my life, ask yourself, who is it I need to forgive? Who is it I need to ask for forgiveness? Please forgive me. In what ways can I forgive myself after I've done that? These are wonderful, amazing topics. You can have 3-month classes on just one aspect of it. And the last point I want to make is, every tradition says, Jamal, you need community. A wall standing alone is useless. Add to it other walls, it can support a roof, even a granary. Even prophets needed companions. That famous, by now 85 years Harvard study that examined and explored what are the ingredients for happiness and longevity. And what was number one? Relationships. Reliable relationships. So I want to end by saying, the traditions say, maybe the most important relationship is the relationship with yourself. Which is why we have a program called Sacred Naming. I talk to myself all the time, but with compassion. I call myself Brother Jamal. And I have constant conversations with Brother Jamal. So let me end by just 1 minute meditation. Close your eyes. Focus on your heart. Just becoming aware of your heart, feeling a connection with the heart. I love this saying, which in our community we repeat all the time. But there's a wonderful revelation by divinity to humanity, where God or Spirit says to each one of us, beloved one, God says, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth. I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the pure, loving heart. So just be with your heart, and that connects you to your higher self, to the source. Just be with the heart. If you want to deepen that, and I do this in my presentations, in working with clients, tell the heart, I love you. That's my most favorite practice, by the way. As often as possible, in meditation, in waking hours, telling my heart, I love you. It might feel awkward. It's okay. Just keep on saying it. I love you. That connects us to my divine spark, the real me. I'm able to go beyond my personality, which is also me. Okay, let go of that. And one last step. I do this in my meditation, also in my waking hours. Besides telling my heart, I love you, focus on the heart, which is a wellspring of eternal love. And from the heart, make an intention to pour out light and love in an outward expansive direction. Whatever you come in contact with. A stone, a tree, a dog, a human being. Just pouring out light and love from the heart as often as possible. That connects us to creation. And one last insight I will tell you while your eyes are closed. I won't have time to go through that. To be of service to God's creation. That brings joy. And I want to repeat the words of Tagore, who said, I slept and dreamt, life was joy. I awoke and found life was service. I served, and lo, service was joy. Service brings us joy. Okay, I'll do a chant coming into awareness. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. You can sing with me. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. And just become very still for a minute or two. I'll invite Dave Brown to come up here. Pastor Dave, oh, here he is right here, okay. Just being very still, quiet. Brother Dave.
It is so good to be back in this space with Brother Jamal, with Sally Joe. I've preached here, we've done Blues Vespers here, the Northwest Interfaith Amigos have done programs here, and it has been, I think, a year since I've been back, so it is very good to be here, and it is wonderful to see a cluster of people that came from Fox Island United Church of Christ, a community that is a wonderful community where I preach about once a month, and I had no idea that I'd see 6 or 8 of you floating, and it's so special to see these friends here. For those that don't know, I'm sort of an interfaith Christian, ordained by the Presbyterian Church. I'm a poet, a writer, and I've been hosting for 27 years something called Blues Vespers, a blues concert with a poem and something to think about that will be returning here sometime in the first half of 2025. About 10 years ago, when I was asked to be part of this service, one of the things, and I want to make some quick comments, and then I'm going to be asking you to think about your intentions for the new year. But one of the things that interested me was the use of the word intentions instead of making New Year's resolutions. And I was really drawn to that idea because I find I kind of am having a little tug of war or quarrel with the idea of resolutions, or what's so popular now, the idea of a bucket list. And my beloved partner said, now be careful, a lot of people like bucket lists, so I'll be careful, but I don't like bucket lists, because it seems to be something where you just go and have an experience to check it off a list to make your ego feel good about doing it, rather than going and experiencing something and just letting it wash over you and seeing what happens and growing by it, not feeling so proud, oh, I did this now, look at me. But to really let the experience mean something. And an intention feels more like how you want to grow, how you want to be, rather than a resolution, which is just something you want to accomplish and move on. At least that's why I was drawn to the word intention. So before I invite you to think about your intentions, and this is going to come as no surprise to anyone, I want to start with a poem and a prayer. The poem is by a Northwest poet who I haven't thought about for a while until I went back and looked at old programs I've done here. The poet is Holly Hughes, and her poem is Mind Wanting More. And it struck me as we ponder 2025 that it's really easy for all of us in this room to see the world around you as a pretty dark place right now. Lots of foreboding, lots of apprehension, and lots of negativity. And I think there's really good reason for us to have that perception. And I'm not suggesting when we make our intentions that we close our eyes to the real challenges that are going to be affecting people, vulnerable people. But the poem I'm going to read invites us not to go into denial in the new year, but to remember the joy and light that is scattered out in the world, even with all the hard stuff. So not denial, but to remember that alongside of the struggle, there's joy. Mind Wanting More by Holly Hughes. When I read this, you're going to tell that she's a Northwest poet. Only a beige slat of sun above the horizon, like a shade pulled not quite down. Otherwise, clouds, sea rippled here and there, birds reluctant to fly. The mind wants a shaft of sun to stir the gray porridge of clouds, an osprey to stitch the sea to the sky with its barred wings, something dramatic, some dramatic music perhaps, a symphony, perhaps a Chinese gong. But the mind always wants more than it has. One more bright day of sun, one more clear night in bed with the moon, one more hour to get the words right, one more chance for the heart in hiding to emerge from its thicket in dried grasses, as if this quiet day with its tentative light weren't enough, as if joy weren't strewn all around. The Mind Wanting More by Holly Hughes. My prayer comes from the Celtic Christian tradition, and I learned it from my friend John Philip Newell. I invite you to pray with me, either with your eyes opened or your eyes closed. O God of new beginnings, who brings light out of night's darkness and fresh green out of hard winter earth, there is barren land between us as people and nations this day. There are empty stretches of soul within us. Give us eyes to see new dawnings of promise. Give us ears to hear fresh soundings of birth. Give us hearts and eyes to feel and see. Amen. For the rest of my 10 minutes or so, I'm going to invite you to reflect and to journal, guided by several questions. I begin this time of looking ahead by looking back. The great 20th century African-American poet Howard Thurman once wrote this, and don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. I just love that quote. So my first question for you to think about and to journal about is, when have you felt most alive in the last year? When have you felt like you've really come alive? Where were you? Were you alone or with someone? How did you get to that place? Do a little thinking about that. When have you felt most alive in 2024? 2 seconds to finish the thought or the sentence. Now that you've spent some time thinking about what made you come alive in the last year, in a second I'm going to invite you again into a silent space to reflect on where you might want to come alive in the coming year. 2 things about sacred intentions. One is it's not a head game alone. It's kind of an integrated act of the heart and the mind and the spirit, thinking about how you want to be in the coming year. Second, it's a time when you need to remember to be gentle with yourself. There is no spiritual report card on the intention you have today for the next year. On December 31st, 2025, you're not going to hear a voice from heaven saying, "You got an A, you did it." Not so much. Be gentle. Our lives change. The circumstances that made us feel my intention for the new year is this shift, and it may end up being that. So I'm going to invite you now, using an exercise I learned from a futurist friend of mine, to imagine, and imagination is such a good gift. It is January 1st, 2026. You are pleased and proud and excited about how the last year unfolded from the time you left the Interfaith Community Sanctuary on January 1st. On January 1st of 2026, look back. What do you see in your life that makes you pleased? That makes you feel that it was a growing year? That makes you feel like you were centered and at home? Write in your journal or in your heart, what do you see looking back on the year ahead, from a year from now, that makes you feel like it is good? As I get ready to close, I hope you'll continue to play with that image of what do you want to look back at and feel good about in your spiritual life as you look forward. 2 other shorter questions. I invite you to continue in silence as the year unfolds. I'm going to be practical. How are you going to remember what your intentions are today? Do you have a soul friend in that Celtic tradition, someone that you can share with and say, in the next year, my intention for my spiritual life is? Do you have a clergy? Do you have a partner? Is there someone that can help you, guide you, remind you? Or if not, is there some other way that you can remember what your spiritual intention is? I'll give you a couple minutes, just a minute to think about that. And let me say to my friends that I'm certainly willing to be that soul friend if you want to share your intention with. And finally, before I close with another poem, take a minute to think, what are the initial steps you might take in the next week to move in the direction that you want to move in 2025? What are some initial things you might do to start moving on that path or on the way that you feel called to move? As I get ready to turn the microphone to Sally Joe, the poem by Mark Nepo, The Myth of Urgency. Everyone wants you to quietly be Atlas, to shoulder it all. Even the voice in your head insists you are behind, but I've seen the light in you, the one that God's finger when we sleep. I've seen the blossom open in your heart, no matter what remains to be done. There are never enough hours to satisfy the minions of want. I love that line. So close your eyes and lean into the oneness that asks nothing of you. When the calls stack answer to no one, though you receive them all, just open your beautiful hands, born with nothing in them. And then this, you have never been more complete than in this incomplete moment. You have never been more complete than in this incomplete moment. Amen.
Oh, wonderful. Why did I offer to go last? That was a bad idea. I got to follow these guys. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Well, it's beautiful. You know, we never discussed what each of us was going to be talking about on this same topic that we had. And so I've just been sitting here marveling at how interwoven they already are, and maybe we can do that. I was thinking of just sending you all down for lunch and forget my part, right? But then I thought, nah, that's a cop-out. Actually, I have some stories to tell that I know they can't tell because they're from my life. And so, but I want you to start. I want to start by reading the front of the program that you have in your hand, the quote there. Does anybody know this poem and want to read it? Well, poem was quoted to us recently by somebody. Dot, you're here. Do you want to read that for us or say it for us? Oh, wait, let me give you the mic. I forgot we were online.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again. Come, come.
Thank you, Dorothy. Dorothy quoted that at the Thursday meditation last week, and I think that was one of the services, and we chose it for the front. I actually, though, I'm making a similar point to what both Jamal and Dave made, which is what we're talking about today are not vows, really, because that word vow is to me, that's a little bit scary. I make a vow, it's a different sort of thing. But as Dave was explaining, an intention is something that opens the door for you to the future. So I wanted to emphasize and agree with that point that Dave made. And also, I know Jamal was talking about the difference too, and I'm going to get into one of Jamal's teachings in a minute. But so I thought about what is my own definition of an intention. And I'm going to put the adjective sacred intention in front of it, because if you notice, you are here today at a program that's called Creating Sacred Intentions. And so I don't think you'd be sitting here if you didn't have some idea of what that meant for you. So I thought I'd share a little bit about what it means for me. I think for me, a sacred intention is a deeply felt desire leading to a plan of action, which is the intent part, the plan, which comes, as Dave was saying, not just from the head, but from the heart. And Jamal emphasized that too. So we're not talking about New Year's resolutions or vows when we're talking about sacred intentions. I'm assuming that our intentions today may turn out to be more like what we call in this community spiritual practices. And spiritual practices are more of what Jamal was giving a lot of examples of in his talk. And that being the case, it occurs to me, and I'd like to share with you, that these are not accomplished in 1 year. A spiritual intention is a lifetime endeavor, okay? And it's something that will change. It will change constantly as we change and grow. So I want to start with a story that happened to me, something that happened to me back in 1990. Around about 1990s, I was practicing Christianity. I was going to a Christian church here in Seattle at the Broadview Community United Church of Christ, and my minister there was one of my favorite ministers of all time, a woman named Chris Morton. I met her. I had never met a woman minister before I met Reverend Chris Morton, so I was pretty surprised at that. Anyway, I was talking with her one day, and she said something about how her favorite spiritual practice these days is walking. And I thought to myself, walking? And I felt a little embarrassed because I didn't know how she could possibly mean that, but I didn't have the courage to ask her what she meant by that, so I just kind of let it go. But I didn't forget it. That was then. This is now, okay? Now, about 10 years later, I had just started coming to this community, and I was listening to NPR, and I heard about, it was Ramadan. It was the month of Ramadan, and you all probably have heard the Muslim world, people in the Muslim world, all the Muslims in the world fast for one full month, every day from sun up to sundown during the month of Ramadan. And I heard this, it was a report, it was a news report, and the billions of people all over the planet who were doing this. And I thought, wow. Now, I had heard of fasting before, and I had even heard of Ramadan, but I didn't realize that they did this for a whole month, every day, morning till night. And I thought, wonder why they all do that. What's the big deal? What happened? You know, I was curious. I had fasted for a day in solidarity with, you know, Nelson Mandela in jail, or, you know, a political action type of fast, you know, where you fast for somebody who's on a hunger fast or who's struggling, and you're fasting to support them. And I thought that was pretty cool. Well, I decided, and I didn't tell anybody, I decided I was going to try this. Now, I didn't know the part about water. You can't have water either. Luckily, I didn't know that, because I went ahead and tried fasting from food. And I had just met Jamal. I had been to his service once or twice, and I decided about 5 or 6 days in, I got a little restless, and I called him up. I don't know if you remember this, Jamal. I called him up, and I said, Jamal, I have a question for you. He goes, yes, go ahead. What is it? I said, what do Muslims do all day when they're not eating or preparing food? Like, you have lots of time on your hand. What do you guys do all day? And he kind of chuckled, and he didn't make me feel stupid. He said, well, you know, a lot of Muslims like to read the Quran in Ramadan, and some of them memorize verses from the Quran. I said, really? He said, yeah, you could try that. Well, as a child, I had always loved memorizing poetry. So I thought I would try that, and I went through, I had a little book with some quotes from the Quran in it. I chose one I liked, it just in English, you know, I didn't know anything about Arabic at that point, and I memorized it. Now, that took me almost a whole month, you guys, because I do not have a good memory, okay? And it wasn't a very long verse, but I had to keep repeating it all day, right? And thinking about and reminding myself that I was trying to memorize it and looking it back up again. Anyway, this became one of my favorite activities, and I didn't wait for Ramadan to come around again to keep doing it. I've been doing it ever since for more than 20 years. I still memorize verses from the Quran in English, and now also in Arabic, because since then I've taken some Arabic lessons, and I love memorizing. I stick in good poetry once in a while, which is why I love Dave's presentations, because he always comes up with some great poems. And memorizing poetry and verses, I began to realize it was a spiritual practice. Why? Because when you're memorizing something with meaning to it, your mind is not going through all that monkey mind that we know so well, and thinking about all the other things that you really would rather not be thinking about. Okay? So, but before I skipped ahead a little bit too much. A little bit later, I was sitting in my living room, and I was living alone at the time. My kids had gone off to school, to college. My daughter was off in college, and I was reading a book by Andrew Harvey. You may have heard of. You ever heard of Andrew Harvey? He's a great mystic, a poet, very spiritual being. And again, probably Jamal had recommended the book. I was reading, and all these things about all the different, his spiritual life, his journey, his practices, all these practices, and I'm reading, and suddenly I get up, and I didn't get up. I sat there, and I threw the book across the room. Now, I want you guys to know, I have been reading since I was 4 years old. I have never thrown a book. I still have never thrown another book. I threw that book across the room, and it shocked me. What did you just do? You don't throw books. Well, I love books, right? But I was upset, and I sat there, and I asked myself, what's the matter with me? Well, this was what was the matter with me. I was angry at myself. Why are you reading about spirituality? Spirituality isn't something you read about. Have you ever tried doing it? And I heard this voice in my head, and I'm thinking, that's true. I'm not going to read another word about spirituality until I can do something. And those of you who know me, you know that is kind of my personality, right? And so I apologize for it if it's not your personality, but that was me. And I remember putting that book down and putting all the books about spirituality down until I could figure out how I could begin to practice spirituality. And that's where I had to define 2 words. And they're not such difficult words, but they are. The first word I had to define was spirituality. What is that? Now, I already told you I'd been to a Christian for a while. I was brought up with no religion in my background. I was brought up by parents who had, by force of their own circumstances, had decided to and felt they had to more or less reject organized religion because of some of the damage it had done to them. And I won't go into that. And to our family, but I won't go into that. But I was brought up with parents who said, well, we must respect people in their religions, but their underlying message was just don't get too involved in it. But as a kid, that kind of makes you curious, right? So I would ask my friends if I could go to church with them once in a while and find out what was going on in those churches and what I might learn from it. And when I got into college and high school and college, I started studying more about religion and finding out. But religion is not spirituality. And so at this point in my life, when I was a grown adult and had kids of my own who were growing up, I had to decide, what does it really mean what does spiritual mean? By the way, I don't think or probably not even any of you here, could say you've defined that for yourselves permanently. I hope not, because I think that's another one of those concepts that grows and changes as we grow and change. I've seen that happening for me, and it's a good kind of growth and change that happens. So let's keep that on a burner there, that we need to think about what do we mean by spirituality and a spiritual intention or a spiritual practice. Now, the other word is practice. Now, I am a pianist. I started learning piano when I was 6 years old. I had a wonderful piano teacher. And I know something about practicing. I took lessons all through school. I gave three solo recitals, and I practiced a lot. And practice is practice. There's no accident that that's the word that goes with spiritual practice. A spiritual practice has to be practiced. And so you learn not to get frustrated when you don't master it after the first try or two, right? You take it step by step, you break it down, and you work on it, right? And it's hard work. It's difficult. So I guess I'm ending with, this is not all good news, maybe, that this is something that's going to be developing over your lifetime, and it's going to take practice, and you're going to need to keep working on it. But guess what? That's okay. Because that way, if it's not working for you at a certain point in time, and it's really not working for you, you can toss it out and say, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to find something else. Now, Jamal, when he was up here, he went through a litany of about 12 different spiritual practices. Did you catch them? Can anybody name one of them? And I'll name it back. Can you name one of the spiritual practices Jamal spoke about? Gratitude practice, right. Practicing silence. You see, he peppered because that's, I've been studying with Jamal for 20 years. I've learned a lot of spiritual practices, but I have read his books, but where I've learned them is in his classes, where we practice them. And by going home and working on them and developing my own ideas of them. So, and here's where we come back to my first story about walking. I told that story for a reason, all right? Anything that's worth doing, really worth doing, requires practice. And anything can become a spiritual practice if it is done and practiced with the intention of deepening our own understanding, connection, and communion with our real self, our true self, okay? And again, we're not talking about our ego self. We're talking about our real self. And also we're talking about deepening our understanding, connection, and communion with the world around us, which is, as far as I can tell, pretty much as real as it gets, okay? And so I'm going to suggest that if you want to think about today, and probably you already have written down some ideas about a spiritual practice or an intention that you can make, the sky's the limit, as long as it's something that has a spiritual purpose for you and is something challenging enough that you will need to practice it. Because if it's too easy, you'll get bored with it and you'll stop it. And if it's too hard, you'll get frustrated with it and that you won't continue. Now, one more distinction I want to make, and I know my time is almost up. This is the distinction between form and essence. And again, this is something Jamal taught me. I give him full credit for this. This applies directly to our intentions and desires. For example, maybe I have a desire for a new job. I need a new job. I'm tired of my old job. Well, I need to dig down and drill down a little deeper. What is it about this new job that would fulfill me that this old job isn't? What's lacking in my old job? Maybe maybe I don't like my interactions with people in my other job, or maybe I don't have enough interactions. I'm sitting at a computer all day. Maybe I'm not making enough money, but then I have to drill down. If I want more money, I want to go ask my boss for a higher salary. Why do I want that money? What is the deeper purpose? What is the essence of that need for more money or that desire for more money? And when you get down to that, it may be that I need more adventure in my life. I want to travel. Maybe I have too many debts and I need to pay off my debts because they're weighing on me. If we know the deeper intention and the deeper, the actual essence of what we want, then we can find there's more than one way to get to it, to accomplish it. So that's where I get back to, if something isn't working for us, it's maybe not getting to the essence of it. And one other thing is that psychologists do say that if we practice something, going back to the practice and knowing whether it's working for us, if we practice something for 18 days or 18 weeks at a time, or like if you're doing something once a week, 18 weeks, or if you're doing something every day, 18 days, the social scientists, psychologists say that it becomes a habit. Now, you all know we're basically creatures of habit, right? We have good habits, we have bad habits. Let's think about developing some good habits. If you're going to practice silence, which is one of the practices that Jamal mentioned, for 5 minutes a day, before you get frustrated or give up on it, try it. I know this sounds like a lot. Try it for 18 days before you throw it out. If after 18 days it really isn't serving you, or you're finding you're not even wanting to do it, then it isn't the right practice for you at this point, I would say. You need to try walking. What does walking have to do with spiritual practice? This is something I discovered. I would come home from work, a long day. I was a middle school teacher for 40 years. Now, you all been to middle school. You know what that's about, right? Okay, a middle school special ed and general ed teacher for 40 years. I would close that school door behind me at 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I would go for a walk around Green Lake every day, rain or shine, dark or light. I would do that walk. But what would happen is the workday was behind me, and I was looking around at the birds, at the trees, at how the nature was changing things from day to day. I was breathing in the fresh air. I was smelling the water. I would see people in the water or people fishing, the dogs walking along. I was enjoying my world. I was connecting with my world. Oftentimes I had a friend with me, but we weren't talking about work. Most of the walks were actually alone. And for me, that's what I needed. And that suddenly, after all those years, I realized that walking could also be a spiritual practice. But it had to have the intent of, it had to have the effect of actually feeding my spiritual life, my heart, my connection, my deepest desires. So when you're thinking about these intentions that you've been writing down, I ask you to think about that and realize that, as when Dave asked us, look back on a year from now, it's not going to be a picnic if you're going to look back on it with a good eye that you accomplished some of your intentions. But as long as you don't stick with things that aren't working, and make sure, and as Dave was suggesting, if you find you can't find a spiritual practice that works for you, hey, most of you have my email, many of you have my phone number, give me a holler. I'll help you think about what sort of a deep intention you might devise for yourself that would not be relevant to anybody else but you, and help you try to find something, because you will be able to find it if you explore enough. Now, I want to end with a poem out of a book that I didn't throw across the room, and I think it kind of wraps up everything we've said to you today, I hope. And some of you know this. Let the beauty you love be what you do. There are thousands of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. That's Rumi, great Sufi poet. I'll read it one more time. Let the beauty you love be what you do. There are thousands of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Amen. Now I'll give you a few more minutes to go on, finish your reflections. If you don't mind, we're going to pass the plate. I'd like to be able to give these gentlemen their due, and so if you feel comfortable and the way is forward for you to give a little today, we would appreciate it. It will go only to our work here at the sanctuary and those who help us with it.
Well, let's just have a few moments of silence as the plate is being passed. I want to tell you, I was very surprised. Oh, okay. Just be silent, yeah. And my friends, in that moment of silence, I want to tell you, I was very surprised. A young scholar came in just now who's very well versed in Rumi, who you memorize the Quran, she memorizes Rumi and lives it. And I haven't even asked her. But Amber, can you come up here and recite a few Rumi poems? Amber is here. Come on, Amber. Here's a Rumi scholar right here. Any class we have, she attends the class. Any Rumi poem. Okay, now speak into the mic. Any Rumi poem into the mic, yeah.
The earth would die if the sun stopped kissing her, but after all this time, the sun never said, "Hey, you owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole entire sky.
Beautiful. This is about unconditional love. And this is actually a poem by the 14th century Hafiz. Read it again. Say it again.
The earth would die if the sun stopped kissing her, but after all this time, the sun never said, "Hey, you owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole entire sky.
Hey, okay. Thank you. Let's just drink that in. As Rumi would say, that if it splashes in your heart, just be with it. Okay, any other poem? You're a ruby.
I forgot that one.
Okay, you're in the midst of granite.
You're in the midst of granite. Wait. Take a pickaxe. You're in the midst of granite. How long have we pursued you? I see the look in your eye, to the root, to your true self.
Beautiful. This is a Rumi poem, yeah. Let's say together. You are
a ruby in the midst of granite.
How
long have
you continue
to
deceive us?
Please see the look in your eyes. To the root, to your true self.
To return to the root of your real self. Beautiful. Okay. Is there any other one you want to recite? Any other poetry from your heart, if you want to? Okay. On everybody else, I'll kiss you. Thank you. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you. So I'll pass the plate around. You can add something if you can. I'll take the other one on the other side. Jamal is starting a new spiritual development class next Saturday mornings from 10 to 12 on Zoom. He'll be teaching us a lot about spiritual practices in his neck of the spiritual world. So let us know or contact me, take a flyer and contact me by email if you'd like to join that class.
It's called the Sacred Laughter of the Sufis. It's about laughter. Oh, the flyers?
Well, I don't have one for everybody, but if you're interested, yes, of course. Take one if you want or pass it on. Yes.
It's all on Zoom. And we'll. If any other announcements you have? Yeah.
I didn't find
We have Sunday. We have Sunday service, of course. We have. George, you have any announcement you want to make?
Right, I have in your flyer, in your program, it tells you about the first Sunday service that's coming up, and thank you, and that will be this coming Sunday, January 5th, which is our annual membership celebration, and everybody's a member who walks in the store if they want to be. I mean, you just have to tell us that you're interested in being a member, and you can also be a member of more than one church or community. Anyway, we're having our membership service and then our guiding council meeting where we elect our annual officers.
If we're doing publicity, I'll say if anybody doesn't live in Seattle but lives in Pierce County, there's a wonderful congregation on Fox Island that is spiritually rich and intellectually authentic and serves. And so check out the Fox Island United Church of Christ. And for one more piece of publicity, if you're interested in my poetry and my photography, I just published a book on Amazon that's available to you if you're interested. I don't usually, but number 2. That's the title. I don't usually, but ... 2. Yes. For all those times I get up and read a poem by my own poem, I say, I don't usually read my own poem, but I'm going to read this one.
Did you bring any of your books?
No.
Well, that was silly.
I brought a gift book for a special friend back there, but that's all.
Well, we'll find it on Amazon. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know, Dave. All right. And we have food downstairs. I want you to know we have vegetarian black beans that Isu, Jamal's sister, made. We have a big pot of lamb soup made from the really good leg of lamb bone that I had. And then we have, goodies. We have fruit. We have vegetables. It's not dinner time, but it's a good snacky thing. And there's lots of food and bread. So please join us downstairs and we can talk more. And if you have questions or you want to contest something we've said, you can challenge us on that too. We would love that. We basically, though, we want to, before anyone goes anywhere, we want to give you a final blessing. Okay?
And we are going to, and please help me because it's so hard. We're going to do an acoustic blues vespers where we'll offer a meditation in the middle. And I believe, as Fox Island knows, it's going to be Stacy Jones by herself with a very well-known, nationally known harmonica player that has a harmonica branded after him, who I can't announce until I get it absolutely confirmed. And so it'll be an acoustic blues with some words for meditation on a Sunday at 5 o'clock, sometime between now and then, and it'll be here in Seattle, and there'll be another one at Fox Island, and I do it at the university. Anyway.
Yeah, let's do the blessings of God. Yeah. Okay. Well, I like to sing my blessing. Is that all right? Okay. And some of you know it, so we can sing it. May the blessings of God rest upon you. May God's peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Mine is one that's familiar, and I just finished a series on it. Dear ones, life is short. We do not have that long to gladden the hearts of those we walk this way with. So be quick to love and make haste to be kind. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Dave. So I'll end by doing a recitation of the first chapter of the Quran. The Quran literally means recitation. It's like, if you study yoga, it's like a Shabd yoga. The power, the essence of it, as Saliju was saying, is in the sound vibrations. So I'll recite the first chapter, and I always say, the good news is it's very short, actually. Okay, I'd like you to join me by singing the equivalent of the Aum or Om in the Islamic tradition, which is HU, who. Who, and give it a voice. Who, keep on going. Who, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الصراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. The translation is, oh God, you're all compassionate, all powerful. Please guide all of humanity on the straight path to you. Having said that, my friends, let me guide you downstairs where the real program starts, fellowship over beverages and snacks.